providing care for a palliative individual, right? It's rewarding, but then at times it can become exhausting as well, very exhausting. And studies have revealed that caregivers, if they don't do enough self-care, it can result in burnout. They can suffer from depression, can have mental health issues, and then they can get sick. I see, when I work with caregivers, I see a lot of issues when, especially in South Asian families, right? This is a new system for them. A lot of us are immigrants. And so the type of support we get back home from neighbors, extended family, immediate family, a lot of people inside the home, right? It's not the same thing here in Canada. Sometimes you don't even know your neighbors, right? You don't have a lot of friends here. You don't have extended family. So support becomes a huge issue. And besides that, people have small kids at home. So say, for example, if grandma is dying at home, and it's dad and mom and very young kids, right? Kids are going home, mom is working, dad is working as well. So that becomes a huge challenge for them. And that is when we suggest them to get help from hospice or put their loved ones in the long-term care, right? Transportation sometimes becomes an issue. When we started running these caregiver support groups, we figured out that transportation is an issue. Weather becomes a huge issue. Like I said, babysitting with kids becomes a huge issue. Language is a huge barrier for some of the caregivers. If you are a caregiver, for example, if I'm a caregiver and I'm caregiving for somebody in my home, right? Self-care is important, because if I won't do self-care, I may get sick. And this I can tell you from my experience, right? I can also give you a short story on this. I had actually a staff at my previous work whose grandma was extremely sick. And grandma was sick, and her mom was the caregiver of the grandma. And mom was not doing enough self-care. She was just a caregiver. And at one point, mom got sick. She got extremely sick. There were a lot of issues. She had to go through a surgery. And at one point, they had to put grandma in a long-term care. So these are examples that we come across when we work in the field, right? Caregivers may have, because sometimes, a lot of times, like, you are emotionally attached to the palliative individual as well. And that takes a toll on your health as well, right? Sometimes you are too, especially in South Asian community, we are too hard on ourselves, right? And sometimes you are like overly responsible or feeling guilty of not taking care of the palliative individual, you know what I mean? And so that makes you sick. Like, there may be sadness. At some point, there may be depression, which results in physical ailments like backache, headache. And this is funny, but when I do certain groups, I always tell ladies, especially ladies, right, that if we are like 20 ladies in a room, I think out of 20, 19 would have lower backache or headache. And caregiving is a huge issue in the community, right? And lack of self-care. So self-care is extremely important for a caregiver. If stress is not taken care of, that results in burnout. And we see a lot, a lot of this in the field. What happens is burnout is, like, say, for example, you're a caregiver of a palliative individual, and you're always, even if you leave the home, you're working or doing something outside, you're always thinking about the palliative individual. You feel overly responsible for fixing everything. So in that case, you don't become a caregiver, you are a caretaker now. You don't have to become a caretaker, you have to be a caregiver, right? And you feel guilty. Have I done enough? No, I'm not doing enough. Can I fix this? Why can't I fix it, right? And then sometimes you become frustrated with the system. You become frustrated with your loved one who's sick. Sometimes you feel guilty because you're angry sometimes. Sometimes you become angry on the loved one who's sick. Sometimes you're angry with the system. Sometimes you're angry with the doctors. Sometimes you're angry with God. And this is all natural part, it's a normal process, right? But if you will not take care of it, if you will not talk about it, if you will not come to a support group, if you will not get help, that will result in burnout. And you yourself will start getting sick. There are a few steps that I would like to share with you for self-care. Number one, the most important thing is acknowledge your emotions, right? Acknowledge your emotions. Number two is don't be afraid to ask for help. Eat properly, exercise, make time for yourself, right? And then be prepared. So the first one, like I said, acknowledge your emotions. It's very important to talk. And if you won't talk about what's happening inside of you, how you feel, right, you will become a pressure cooker. You know what I mean? And what happens if you become a pressure cooker? When a pressure cooker explodes, it hurts itself and it hurts people around it, right? So you don't have to become a pressure cooker. Talk about your feelings, acknowledge your emotions, right? Number two is don't be afraid to ask for help. People are often scared to ask for help, especially in the South Asian culture. It's like embarrassment. What if the other person will say no? We don't have to be scared of that, right? Ask for help. Ask a friend. Ask a neighbor. Ask the system, right? There's so much help available like this one. Number three is eat properly and exercise. So when I say exercise, I'm not asking anybody to spend a lot of money and join the gym, right? Like I did. So, but then, exercise, like just take a walk, right? Eat properly, whatever you like. Drink a cup of tea. Make time for yourself. And again, making time for yourself is reading a book. Sitting in your living room and watching the backyard. Listening to soft music or whatever you like. Talking to somebody back home. If you don't have anybody here, there are so many things available, Skype, and I don't want to mention the names, but there are so many things, right, that will keep you connected to your loved ones back home. So this is all support, right? And finally, I said, be prepared, get information. There are so many resources available for caregivers. Call us, call anybody, right? Get help, be prepared. There's a palliative individual in your home and death is expected. So get information, how to do, what to do, when to do. And this will all help you.